turn-based combat? Then you're stupid and wrong. I don't know. It's no secret that turn-based RPGs are one of the most controversial game genres of all time. Or at least vocally controversial. There's never been a game for everyone. Maybe Wii Sports? But when it comes to turn-based combat, people really like it or they really don't. Before I let my extreme amounts of bias show, there are no doubt things to criticize turn-based games for, and I totally understand why some people avoid the genre. Fighting the same enemies over and over or losing hours of progress since the last save point can be incredibly draining. Pressing buttons in menus doesn't always feel as cool as beating up a big boss directly. JRPGs are the games most commonly associated with turn-based combat, and while there are plenty of standouts, their stories have gained a reputation for being generically convoluted in a sense.
It will remain a dream so long as I live. Who I am, I don't give a fuck who you are.
Gameplay features can also be so complicated or require so much reading and planning that players looking for a casual experience might feel dissuaded by too many words and numbers. Imagine if a psychologist was showing you those ink blot tests and then he goes, "How does this make you feel?" What the fuck is that? What I'm getting at is that even as a fan of turn-based combat, there are plenty of features that grind my gears, break my bones, insert third analogy here, and they're often why people try one or two games, get a bad taste in their mouth, and refuse to go near them again until they see how cool Persona 5 looks. Yet in the same vein, I think the state of discussion surrounding turn-based combat is disappointing. Like most other genres, it's home to an incredible amount of variety and innovation, and the very idea that turn-based combat is outdated causes it to be viewed as a technical limitation rather than a stylistic choice. It's easy to dunk on what older games do wrong, as their problems often stem from an attempt to extend playtime with limited resources. But making some joke about JRPG storylines or saying grinding and random encounters are bad doesn't even take a full sentence, so now I can talk about the reasons people should give these games another try. If I were to call this video "The Problem with Turn-Based Combat," the problem is that people are playing the wrong fucking games. You think you know somebody and then you find out they've never played Toontown. The first area I want to look at is the defining feature, so to speak. I don't mean this in a gimmicky way, a la Pokémon inventing a new button to press before forgetting it in the next entry, but rather a fundamental twist or complete overhaul of an existing system that makes combat engaging. You've got plenty of games that offer things like job changes and break systems, but I want to talk about mechanics that go a little farther than that. The innate simplicity of turn-based combat is what gives each game an opportunity to shine. The systems themselves are so rooted in the minds of most players that they can go in a million different directions, or in some cases, subvert your expectations about the genre entirely. Yes, I'm gonna mention Undertale, but it won't be my only example, I promise. Fire Emblem implements permadeath to recontextualize conventional battle strategies and difficulty. Many games in the series allow you to view various conversations between characters, with some entries including the option to have units get married and start a family. This narrative focus on giving a name and story to each soldier then challenges the way you approach each mission. Instead of speedrunning the game by sending nameless chess pieces to their certain demise, you have to consider how to keep as many allies alive as possible. If Lil Jimmy the tank driver gets blown up in Advance Wars, you can just replace him with his twin brother, but your anime wife? She's dead forever. How are you gonna give her pets on the touchscreen and blow into the mic to wake her up?
Close your eyes.
Okay, hold on. I thought I was talking about turn-based combat. And then there's Darkest Dungeon, which has permadeath and no kissing. Well, why would anyone play it then? Guiding a ragtag team of adventurers through ruins and caverns as they constantly whiff attacks and develop horrible illnesses while also trying to manage torchlight, food, ailments, stress, and inventory space generates more tension than some of the most intense action games I've ever played. It doesn't feel impossible, but it simultaneously makes every choice feel very deliberate while also challenging preconceptions about roguelikes. Even a successful run can result in setbacks, whether that be diseases and mental illnesses for your party, or even the death of your best characters. While difficulty can be a great way to stand out from the rest, it certainly isn't the only option, and many of my favorite RPGs range from comfortably easy to very punishing, so let's take a look at some other gimmicks. Persona breaks up long stretches of dungeon crawling with its signature high school life mechanics, creating an entirely new form of turn-based gameplay where you have to spend your limited time in the real world wisely, just like you would with each turn in a battle. Who you choose to hang out with or the activities you pursue after class then end up having a direct impact on your strength and abilities when you get back to adventuring. There can also be a certain fatigue when it comes to using the same moves and strategies ad nauseum, but while most games circumvent this by occasionally giving you new party members, Shin Megami Tensei uses the Demon Fusion system to encourage constant changes. Your party will often become outclassed by stronger enemies, and the game gives you two choices. You either switch up your demons to utilize the wide variety of elemental moves and buffing skills, or you get your shit kicked in by a skeleton. Also, you can't just force all-powerful demons into tiny balls like some sort of barbarian. No, you have to engage them in rigorous conversation. Maybe demolish them in a debate with superior facts and logic.
So here's the big question. Top or bottom?
Middle? For some players, another problem with turn-based combat is that it feels like watching a fight rather than participating in one. So the developers of Yakuza 7 said, hey, let's make it fucking stupid. Instead of a quick jolt or fancy pre-rendered explosion, almost every move in Like a Dragon happens in real time, from the ragdoll-infused beatdowns to the unbelievable special moves. Not requiring constant user input and having the ability to break away to cutscenes allows for some insane attacks that are genuinely fun to watch multiple times. Plus, they're much more rewarding when they tie back into the game's optional content. Assisting people through side stories will allow you to call them in for support, and the ways in which you can absolutely obliterate your enemies are a little concerning, actually. Like, I didn't just punch and kick the final boss. I helped a young woman grow her failing business by hiring homeless people and children off the street to run a small confectionery, then bought some more property, ran some local commercials, apologized to the shareholders, took out some loans, hired a monkey after beating him up in an excavator, busted out the big money, and grew in the rankings until I became the #1 business in the city, which earned me a funny little button on my phone that calls down an orbital laser, which I used to holy shit. Video games have been around for long enough that they can include a character that grew up playing classic video games, and it makes sense. Adding this personal touch makes Like a Dragon's turn-based combat feel meaningful, a love letter to the JRPGs that inspired the way Ichiban fights and views the world around him. Oh, and Undertale and Deltarune completely redefined the form by letting you dodge onslaughts of bullet hell attacks while solving puzzles to spare your opponents, but you probably knew that already. Why does it matter though? Because it's storytelling through gameplay. That's my second thing I want to talk about. Because of their less involved nature, turn-based games have the unique ability to merge storytelling more intimately with gameplay, without having to worry about players missing important conversations or background details in the middle of a heated action sequence. Lines of dialogue and mini cutscenes can be inserted between turns without interrupting the flow of battle, which helps to keep things interconnected. Undertale fully utilizes this idea by making battles feel like conversations, especially since killing your opponent isn't the only option. Characters will express disappointment or anger if you attempt to fight back, and any range of emotions from happiness to utter confusion as you stubbornly search for ways to spare them. It's not an example of cutscene into gameplay into cutscene. The battles themselves are some of the most memorable set pieces in the entire game. Oh, I fucking love video games. I apologize that this isn't the first nor the last time I will be mentioning Persona 5, but I have to mention Persona 5. However, to explain why I think turn-based games can tell a clearer story, I need to compare it to its canon spin-off Persona 5 Strikers. Persona is really good at building atmosphere during fights, and using the very nature of turn-based battles to put tremendous bosses on display, weave character dialogue into combat, and help the player take things at their own pace while still maintaining a signature style. But Strikers is something of a sensory overload. Despite being a real-time action game, which some players would consider to be less outdated than a turn-based one, it's much more difficult to pay attention to any storytelling while focused on the game's hectic combat. Boss fights are an auditory mess, as any back and forth dialogue is drowned out by aggressive tunes and 5 billion sound effects going off at the same time. I'd love to hear this villain's tragic monologue, but let me just show you.
I have everything. You don't know what that's like. The further up the social ladder, the shittier they were to me. Even if tortured me. Why?
The back and forth nature of turn-based combat also contributes to unique storylines for each player outside of any overarching plot lines. To give credit where credit is due, this is the area where Pokémon shines. Forging a bond with the lovable characters in your party has always been a staple of the series' appeal, and fans who grew up with the games no doubt have countless memories of the silly names they gave to members of their team or the stress associated with phases of the journey like Victory Road. As a kid, getting to choose a starter felt like receiving a partner that was truly mine, and designing a team of 6 from hundreds of options gave me a unique sense of freedom that other games didn't really have. Nuzlocke and challenge runs are incredibly popular within the community because they force players to use Pokemon they might usually neglect, while also strengthening bonds forged with each of them in the event of a close victory or untimely demise. There are plenty of ways to make someone feel overpowered or helpless during a game, but there's something special about altering the items and systems players become accustomed to during an RPG. If you expect your gear to be equipped, your skills to be usable, heck, even the buttons in your menu to work, then what does it feel like when they don't? As you go on wacky and whimsical dream adventures in OMORI, combat functions normally. But in the waking world, when you find yourself alone in the dark, attacking is pointless. Your only option is to attempt to calm down as the grotesque, distorted images of Sunny's childhood fears slowly close in. The final encounter then incorporates these skills while simultaneously playing with a simple menu option. An unavoidable loss, while not presented as such, sends you to a game over screen, and whether or not you choose to continue determines the ending you receive. These changes to the formula don't have to be insurmountable challenges though. They can work in the opposite way, like how Persona games end by handing the player a unique god-killing move to bolster their sense of finality. Or you could be Undertale again, where Sans can deal damage through the menu itself if you aren't efficient enough at navigating, challenging the comfort that comes with a less interactive genre. And since I was able to end this section on another tangent about Undertale, let's talk about interactivity. There are two types of interactivity that I consider integral to engaging turn-based design. Most games don't have both, but having neither can often lead to a dropped title far before the credits roll. The first is more direct, more mechanical. It's how it feels to menu. Just like how a car feels to drive or a weapon feels to wield, the efficiency of controlling a turn-based RPG is integral to immersing the player in the game's world. It's like the concept of using hotkeys in editing or increasing your words per minute on a keyboard. Getting closer to moving at the speed of thought is a feature that often goes unconsidered until you realize just how rewarding it feels to speed through memorized layouts and find exactly what you need. Or, on the flip side, how aggravating it can be to wait for long animations and sift through hundreds of items. This idea of menuing includes battle speed as well. There's nothing wrong with older games or smaller indie titles having moving PNGs or simple animations, but there's a reason Pokémon is again responsible for one of the most infamous examples of slow combat. Waiting for a Blissey's health bar to drain is physically painful, nor is it interactive in any sense of the word. Sit back, we're gonna be here for a little while. Play any good games recently? I've been playing Return of the Obra Dinn. That one's pretty cool. But you know what is interactive? Pressing buttons after you press the menu buttons. While many turn-based games often reward methodical decision-making and a comprehensive understanding of their mechanics, sometimes it's just fun to press more buttons. I know, plenty of them are just glorified QuickTime events, but they're good glorified QuickTime events. Some of the best examples are found in Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi series. Perfectly timing jumps, hammer swings, and combo attacks adds that sense of participation that many players are searching for when they play a video game. They aren't just there to watch characters fight, they want to be the characters and do the fighting themselves. And in Ring Fit, you gotta do the exercising yourself. Like a Dragon is also really good at making combat feel dynamic. Since each character has to physically approach their target, other enemies can occasionally get extra damage in or cancel your hits. You can also deal AoE damage based on positioning and quickly follow up on downed enemies with a stronger attack, which rewards active play and fast menuing. Mix all of this in with simple QTEs for attacks and perfect guards, and the turn-based nature of the game fades into the background as you watch Ichiban kill a man by dancing really hard. That guy's fucking dead. While not strictly adhering to the fundamentals, Ni no Kuni mixes turn-based attacks with an element of active movement, allowing you to switch between characters and run around the battlefield. And while the Final Fantasy VII Remake would generally be considered a real-time action game, it takes inspiration from the original FF7's active time battle system to space out the use of powerful items and abilities. Undertale just says fuck it and adds mini-games into its bullet hell system, which is already inside a turn-based RPG. Can we get an Undertale mentions counter? 4? I mean, it's not that bad. Okay, what if I say Deltarune? Alright, cool. But this video isn't over yet, as there's one more piece of the puzzle that can really solidify a turn-based game in the hearts of its players. And if you've seen any of my videos before, you already know I'm gonna talk about music. And I'm not even sorry about it. Whether you're on a vast adventure through the open plains, exploring dark caverns, or slashing through hundreds of demons, there are a lot of ways audio can come into play, from ambient music to voice lines to sound effects. In the case of competitive shooters or other multiplayer games, you might be consumed by voice chat or choose to listen to music outside of the game itself. But when it comes to turn-based RPGs, especially during intense moments where you're considering your next move or conducting impressive amounts of menuing, there isn't much else going on in terms of audio. Music takes center stage. You need themes that are repeatable, loopable, and don't make me want to blow my brains out after hearing the first 5 seconds for the 500th time. A bull. And damn do these games deliver. You've got incredible symphonic rock, dubstep, Toho, jazz? No, I can't do that one, I can't. Hip-hop with completely unintelligible English?
Here's a way, kind of peace now, face reality, never be charity. The enemy you're fighting covers all society. Damn right, mommy's not here, gonna fight all night.
Turn-based RPGs hit it out of the park so consistently that even though they may not feature any active combat, their battle music can still get you hyped up to beat the shit out of anything from a level 1 slime to a towering final boss. For fans of any given series, the songs paired with memorable battles can evoke any number of strong emotions upon a later listen. Hey Pokémon fans! Unfortunately, not every game is perfect, and not every battle in a turn-based RPG is created equal. Boss fights can have me on the edge of my seat, but even in many of my favorite titles, I might just be fishing for a teeny bit more XP or finishing up a low-level side quest. That's why music is so important. Quiet, dynamic soundscapes and sweeping orchestral tunes can work for exploration-oriented experiences, but the only way to improve turn-based combat from a music standpoint is to make a track go so hard that simply pressing the attack button in the menu becomes a challenge. Then I won't even notice I'm not actually a teenager piloting a giant mech. But even with all that being said, I'm not trying to say people are wrong for disliking turn-based combat. It's not for everyone. There are obviously things to criticize certain RPGs for, but there's also something frustrating about constantly hearing the argument that the combat needs to be fixed, rather than the idea that it can be an engaging design choice on its own. Games have come a long way since the days of copious grinding and random encounters, and at the end of the day, this video is just a way for me to talk about cool games that I like. Even though I adore action games that can keep me on my toes, I don't need every game to push me to my physical limits to feel immersed, and the trade-off from skill to strategy is often a welcome one. There's a real sense of enjoyment in being able to relax while playing a game, to lean back in the chair rather than hunch forward toward the monitor. You know what I mean, don't act like you never go shrimp mode when shit hits the fan. Plus, while JRPGs can sometimes get a bad rep for being convoluted, they're also home to some of my favorite stories and characters in all of gaming, and diving into an expansive world and its mechanical systems for 30+ hours while listening to absolute jams is pretty fun sometimes. That's about it though. If you have any personal favorites or need examples I didn't get around to, feel free to leave them in the comments. I always love finding new games to talk about. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video, and if you'd like to help support my channel, I have a Patreon linked in the description. It really helps me out, and I'm showing it here on the screen, and I'm honestly just trying to decide between my last two moves here.
I couldn't help but notice you haven't clicked the subscribe button yet.